This is Ron Tyler with Emergency Management Associates, coming to you live from the crossroads of the West in Salt Lake City, Utah. We want to welcome everybody here that is joining us here on the Emergency Management Associates program tonight, and those who will join us during our program, and those who may join us on a delay at a later delayed broadcast. We want to welcome everyone here. We appreciate you being here. Thank you very much. Hey, folks, I want to especially say hi to my friends Dave and Victoria. Um, I spoke to them earlier this afternoon, and it was such a pleasure to visit with them, find out more about them, find out why they um, enjoyed our program and what we could do to make it even more special in the future for everybody. So anyway, found out a lot. Really enjoyed the conversation and hope to meet them at some point very shortly. Um, we want to say hi to everybody. We appreciate you all being with us. Um, Today is Thursday. It's going to, for the most part, be devoted to Cascadia. I made that decision a long time ago, Mondays and Thursdays, and this uh, today is no exception. Today is no exception. We finally got information from Terry Rempel today, and we're going to be sharing that with you as well. First off, coronavirus. Uh, we have another cruise ship involved. For those of you that know, we've got a cruise ship sitting now off the coast of San Francisco, full of people, thousands of people. And someone on board has the coronavirus. And now the officials in San Francisco are not allowing that cruise ship to come into San Francisco. It is sitting off the coast. They have sent test kits and doctors and nurses out to the ship via helicopter to be able to do testing of everybody on board the ship. The ship is not going to be allowed to be moved any closer to shore until everyone on the ship has been tested. That is the latest word from San Francisco. We have people in California that have the coronavirus. We have numerous cases there. We have numerous cases in Washington State. We have cases in Wisconsin. We've got cases in Idaho and North Dakota and uh, Texas, Arkansas. We've got cases in uh, Atlanta, Georgia. We've got cases in Florida. We have cases in New York City. It's all over the country. It's all over the country. And as much as my research shows, as much as the authorities are trying to hide the information from us, it the information still gets out in some way, shape, or form. Um, Frankly, I told you I was disgusted with the way China was handling the coronavirus issue, covering up information, where the only information we could get was from funeral home directors that said that they were incinerating bodies to the tune of hundreds a day, and yet they're still not admitting to any more than just over 3,000 deaths, which is disgusting because we know darn well there's a lot more than that. There's over 80,000 cases of coronavirus around the world. Um, I could go on and on and on to report on it. It's it's disgusting. Um, World Health Organization has reported we're only days away of declaring it a worldwide pandemic. Um, it doesn't appear to be slowing down at all. So right now, I am, like I said, I'm disgusted because even our own people here in the United States won't admit to anything. They just won't admit to anything. I thought this country was better than that. I thought we were built on principles. And yet, to know that our own country is hiding information. It's chilling. It's chilling. While I'm aware that most people would like to think that, oh, it's not going to happen, it already has. And for us to say that we're going to ignore it, it's not acceptable. It's not acceptable. So, anyway, that's the long and the short of it. Let's go over to our map at USGS. I want to show you some of the main earthquakes that have hit today. First off, since the map is already showing Alaska, again, there are a lot more earthquakes here in Alaska than USGS is telling us about. They show one earthquake up here just south of the Arctic Circle, a 2.5 magnitude quake that hit south-southeast of New Alakekek, Alaska. Yes, that did hit. Across from Mount Redoubt, they're reporting a 2.7 magnitude quake east of Mount Redoubt, east of the Cook Inlet there, Anchor Point, a 2.7 magnitude earthquake. South of there, a 3.0 in Kodiak, Alaska, north of Kodiak, Alaska. We also have reports of another one out in the Gulf of Alaska, a 3.4 earthquake that happened this morning, 293 kilometers, or approximately 180 miles southeast of Kodiak in the Gulf of Alaska. This map does not for sure tell us much of anything. Doesn't tell us much of anything. I'm going to show you some earthquakes here. A 4.6, a moderate 4.6 hit 49 kilometers south-southeast of Karakenya, Tajikistan. A 4.4 moderate quake hit over Dadhar, Pakistan, approximately 6 miles south-southeast of Dadhar, Pakistan. Over here in Burma, a 4.4 magnitude quake, again a moderate quake, hit 81 kilometers northwest of Myitkyina, Burma. Now I know I'm butchering the name of that town, but I'm sorry, I just don't speak the language, and it's hard for me to come up with the exact pronunciation of that town, but it hit in Burma, moderate quake. Why are we getting earthquakes in this area? Because we are getting moderate quakes over here in the Western Pacific. We're getting large and moderate quakes over here in the South Pacific. And as we have explained in the past, when earthquakes hit the South Pacific and here in the Western Pacific, the seismic energy migrates. It migrates west. And that's what we're seeing here. But there's a lot more earthquakes than we're telling you about here because, again, USGS is not showing that. So, Tuvalu, Indonesia had another moderate 4.2 today. This is over in the central Indonesia area, south of the Philippines. Up here is Mindanao, Philippines, and even Mindanao, Philippines had a few earthquakes today, but USGS is not telling us about it. Over here near Guam, a 4.5 moderate quake hit 102 kilometers, approximately 60 miles west of Marizo Village, Guam, a U.S. territory. Over here in Papua New Guinea, if I can get this larger quake, here we go. Here in Papua New Guinea, we had a large 5.2 magnitude quake this morning. It was in the middle of the night for them. Now it's getting light. It's getting light in Papua New Guinea here. But this was offshore from most islands where people live in. 5.2 magnitude quake hit, and it's a large quake, hit 161 kilometers, about 95 miles east northeast of Angora, Papua New Guinea. This earthquake was not the only one that hit. A 4.8 also hit, and a 4.7 magnitude quake hit. See if I can enlarge this any more than we're seeing here. See, it was hit, these earthquakes hit on this fracture zone. This whole area is just like Cascadia area is. There are a bunch of fracture zones here, subducting. One plate subducting under another, just like Cascadia. That's why we're getting earthquakes here. Okay, let's go down here to the South Pacific. Early this morning, we had a large 5.6, a very large 5.6 magnitude quake that hit 168 kilometers, approximately 95, 98 miles east, southeast of Ro'u Island, New Zealand. This was on that fracture zone that goes all the way from the North Antarctic Ridge. This is the North Antarctic Ridge here. And it goes up through New Zealand, up here to Ro'u Island, and also where another quake hit north of there. A moderate 4.8 earthquake hit approximately 62 miles south-southwest of Pangai Tonga. So we've had two earthquakes, one of them being a very large earthquake and another being a moderate earthquake over here on this fault zone. It goes, like I said, from the north mid-Pacific area here, North Antarctic, and goes all the way up here into the South Pacific Islands, Tonga, Fiji, and that area here. Just so you know, over in the South Atlantic Ocean, also north of the North Antarctic Ridge here, the Southern Mid-Atlantic Ridge, a 5.4, large 5.4 magnitude earthquake hit there as well today. Not to be outdone, but Argentina has also seen a large earthquake early this morning. A 5.5 magnitude quake hit 39 kilometers, approximately 25 miles south of Tinogasta, Argentina. This is north central Argentina near the Chilean border. A 5.5 magnitude earthquake hit there, and north of that in Antofagasta, Chile, a 4.0 magnitude quake is hit, and there are numerous other earthquakes in here. And again, USGS conveniently has left out, didn't tell us about. And people wonder why I don't even like talking about that agency. Because we pay good tax dollars and we don't get squat out of them. The work ethic here in the United States sucks. We have people that are educated that won't give us the information we need. Won't give us the education, any information. And these are highly paid, educated individuals. Yet they're too good for everybody else. Okay, let's go over to the United States. Over here in the Cascadia subduction zone area, We had another earthquake that hit, a small 3.3 magnitude earthquake hit this morning, 152 kilometers west of Port Orford, Oregon. Port Orford, Oregon here. This is 152 kilometers, approximately 90 miles west of Port Orford. Now you can see where it is. It was not on the Gorda Ridge here. This is what they call the Gorda Ridge. This is the Cascadia subduction zone. This long earthquake fault here going north and south, Cascadia subduction zone. This is the Gorda Escarpment, the Gorda Ridge, and the Blanco fracture zone here that meets up with the Juan de Fuca here. This was just inside, just east of the Gorda Ridge and the Blanco fracture zone. This is like an arrow pointing into the shore. Okay, so that's where this earthquake hit. There was also other earthquakes that you need to know about in the Cascadia area. So let's take a look at that. Let's take a look at that. Thirty-nine miles south of the village of Queen Charlotte's Island, we had another earthquake today, a 2.3. A 2.3 magnitude earthquake hit just west of Queen Charlotte's Island today. Again, the seismic energy has migrated south from Alaska along the fracture zone. That's why we're still getting hit at Queen Charlotte's Island and around Vancouver and on and on and on down into the Cascadia subduction zone area, just south of the Blanco fracture zone and just inside the Gorda Ridge today. The seismic energy is moving, but it's not moving like it should. As I've said before, we believe that the seismic energy is caught up and is being held up in Alaska, that there's seismic energy being held up right in this area here, in the Pacific Northwest. And when it finally releases, there's going to be heck to pay. It's coming. It's coming. And they're not reporting information. They're not giving us the information we need. I'm going to get into it in just a minute, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. USGS didn't show us have any earthquakes in Washington or Oregon. The only earthquake they reported was out at sea, west of the subduction zone. Over here in Antioch, Washington, we have a 0.06 earthquake. Okay. Just east of there, Waterville, Washington, is 0.64. Okay. Let's go in here a little bit, down south. I bet you can't guess where this is. One of our volcanoes is getting hit quite solidly. Quite solidly. This is near Amboy, Washington. Does that give you a better hint? Mount St. Helens was hit today. 8 earthquakes hit Mount St. Helens today. All of them minor earthquakes. Okay. The summit, the crater was hit. A 0.36 minus 0.13, meaning it's above sea level. Of course it is. Is 0.22 and a minus 0.11. The inner crater was hit. The rim of the crater, the south rim of the crater, is 0.22. Let's go up to the east side is 0.6. Going north, the northeast side of 1.36 and a 0.18. And then the north side of the crater is 0.36. So the summit inside the crater was hit, and all around the north and the east side of Mount St. Helens was hit by earthquakes today. Okay, Mount St. Helens. But of course, the U.S. agency was too good to tell us about that. Southwest of Mount St. Helens, 13 miles north of Amboy, was hit by 0.51. Mount St. Helens, and this was out west of there, south and west of the volcano. Fascinating, huh? Very fascinating. That's what happened in Washington today. They're the only earthquakes being reported in the Pacific Northwest. Cascade, Idaho was hit by 1.41 today. Up north in Roman, Montana, the northwest end of the Yellowstone magma chamber was hit by 1.29 today. Helena, west side Helena, Montana, a 2.07. Hold on a second. Hello? Hello?
Want to do international?
We can go to Canada. Why?
That's who's asking.
We can go to Canada.
That's it. So we do international.
Yes, we do.
Okay. I would need to know.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye. Sorry, my family needed information about that. Sorry, folks. Anyway, getting back here to West Yellowstone, Helena, Montana was hit by 2.07. And we've got more earthquakes here. Going east from Cascade, Idaho, we go to Dillon, Montana, 1.43. Going east from there, West Yellowstone, 22 miles west-northwest Yellowstone, Montana, is 0.74. Then we get to a few more earthquakes here. They're all jumbled up here. 0.47, a 1.03, and a 1.56 magnitude earthquake hit over there near West Yellowstone. And east of there, 42 miles east-northeast of Old Faithful Geyser. Old Faithful Geyser, a minus 0.32 hit above sea level. Above sea level. And yet those aren't on the map either. Those are not on the USGS map. There's two other earthquakes here on the very south end of the Yellowstone magma chamber. A 2.6 in Soda Springs, Idaho, and a 1.95 in Soda Springs, Idaho. This is the very south end of the Yellowstone magma chamber. However, I also should say that there is some mining going on around Soda Springs also I found out about today. I was not aware of until this morning. That Soda Springs was hit. That basically the entire magma chamber of West Yellowstone was hit. The south end, from side to side around West Yellowstone and north of Yellowstone. North of Yellowstone. So it's literally all over. Look at the spread of earthquakes. And this isn't even all of them. Murray Greeley put out a report today and she talked about it. She talked about it. Before we go into Cascadia, and then if we have time after we talk about Cascadia, we can talk about other earthquakes. But again, we have 100 earthquakes in Southern California. 100 earthquakes in Southern California. Don't let anybody fool you, folks. Seismicity is building in Southern California. It's building in Southern California. Okay? Let's go talk about Cascadia. Let's see here. Okay, let's talk about Cascadia. Okay, while we're here, this is Mount Rainier, Voigt Creek, Mount Rainier, Voigt Creek. This is what happened last night up here. Yesterday evening, 4 p.m. in the evening, 4 p.m. in the afternoon, Pacific time. And you see magma infill going on, and you also see what? What are all these strange marks here? This is venting from the volcano, steam venting from the volcano. You still see it all over. This is magma infill going on all day long here at Mount Rainier. And let's go to what it looks like right now. Oh, I'm sorry, that was the day before that. This is what's going on right now. Again, this starts out at 1600 hours, 4 p.m. Pacific time to present. We still have a lot of magma infill going on here at Mount Rainier. Mount Rainier. This is Mount Baker. Mount Baker. This is yesterday going into today. This started out this morning at 0900 hours, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Okay. Basically, what they have done here at Mount Baker, they've turned the machine down. It might as well be off. It might as well be off. This is current. They turned the machine on late this afternoon. And you can see what's going on. We have magma infill going on, and there's some venting going on here at Mount Baker as well. But again, this is what we've seen since yesterday at 4 p.m. Very little And then all of a sudden they turn the machine back on. And we see magma infill going on here. What are they hiding? What are they trying to hide? Let's go over here to Mount St. Helens. This is the East Dome, Mount St. Helens. We have magma infill going on. For some reason, the sensor on this particular machine blips at just about the same time every day. That's what this is. Okay. We show some earthquakes. Remember us seeing some earthquakes here at Mount St. Helens today? There's 8 of them. We see one tiny one there, possibly one there, an earthquake here, small earthquake here as well. Let's see what it is right now. We have magma infill going on. You can see it. That's why we had earthquakes at Mount St. Helens today. The magma beneath that plug. Consider a volcano as a wine bottle with a plug in the top, holding the wine in. In this case, it's a volcano with a plug in, a plug at the very top, the cone, the summit of the volcano. And that lava plug is sitting there right in the middle of that volcano in the summit. And it's just sitting there and it's getting hammered on by magma pushing up into the rock. And it's fracturing. It's fracturing. That's what's going on there. Okay. This is another view. This is Trade Dollar Lake. We're seeing Mount St. Helens here again. Okay. You see magma infill going on. We see the earthquakes. We see some small venting going on here. Okay. But you see the earthquakes, you see the magma infill going on. That's what's important to take from this. Okay. This is yesterday. Same thing going. Okay. You see the magma infill going on from 4 o'clock this afternoon to present. The red lines, the black line, the blue, the red, the black, the blue. The magma infill going on at Mount St. Helens. Let's go over here to Oregon, Mount Hood in Oregon. This is yesterday at 4 o'clock. Again, these sensors, for some reason, every day, the same problem. Okay, whatever, the sensor does that. But we see magma infill going on, and it's not heavy. It looks like it gets a little bit heavier as it gets into later today. Let's look at present. We still have it. We still have it going on. That blip with the sensor, that's what we're seeing every day. But we still have magma infill going on at Mount Hood. So now you see the seismograms. They tell the story, don't they? They tell a real story. Would you like to hear it from Terry Rempel? We've got more information here. All right. I will get to this. I'll get to this part of the report in just a minute. There's another report here I'm going to pull up here. And I'm not sure why it didn't come up the first time. Terry Rempel issued another report today. All right. This is the first part of his report. Let me make it larger here so we can talk about it here. This is called Cascadia Developments 2020 by Terry Rempel. As he has said before, folks, I am no more than a citizen scientist. Like most of you who will read this, I am not credentialed in the fields of study involved in the writing of this paper. And like all credentialed scientists, I do not have an absolute understanding of the Cascadia megaquake. But unlike credentialed scientists in professional agencies, I am not restrained by limits of fields of study or professional restrictions of release of information. If it is accepted that the Cascadia megaquake comes soon, then the normal 7 to 12 year period of scientific acceptance of new discoveries guarantees that none the public will receive any reasonable warning of the megaquake from any professional agency. For the scientists, for the science that proves that the process that will release this earthquake has now been underway for over 6.5 years is new science. The last Cascadia megaquake was 320 years ago. There is no means in science to determine what precursors led to the release of this earthquake so long ago. And by the time regulated science accepts the new data proving there are many precursor signs, the Cascadia megaquake will have already occurred, in my opinion. I produced my first Cascadia megathrust earthquake white paper on September 3rd, 2019, based on approximately 2,000 hours of general earthquake-related studies and perhaps 500 hours of Cascadia earthquake-specific study. Since then, I've added approximately 1,500 hours of additional Cascadia megaquake-related study. My only intent in writing this paper is to encourage preparation and hopefully to save lives. It is much work done for no personal gain. I pray that the public reading this will have their own eyes open to what most certainly comes and comes soon. How soon I cannot say, and this is proven, for I tried to forecast its timing and failed. It's a hard thing to forecast within 100 years. It's a hard thing to forecast within an earthquake cycle that occurs every 243 years on average, with a variability of well over 100 years. To forecast such a cycle within 6 weeks proved beyond my ability, and I have learned from it. But understanding the continued development of precursor signs of it, as well as within my capacities, and so I present the best science of the Cascadia megathrust earthquake, so that you may also know and make the best decisions for yourselves. The information in this paper will be overwhelming for many and lead to reaction rather than careful consideration of facts and evidence. But it is my position that the public is entitled to know as much as possible and decide for themselves what to do based on the best information available. This quote from leading earthquake scientists from their research letter entitled Superquakes and Supercycles is very telling. Quote, clearly much needs to be learned about these great events, so much so that the most previous estimates of maximum earthquake size in subduction plate boundaries should be considered suspect, and perhaps other fault systems as well. McCaffrey, 2007-2008. Our perspective on this issue is clearly hampered by short historical and even shorter instrumental records. In two earthquakes, the 2004 9.15 and the 2011 Japan 9.0, the forecast magnitudes were exceeded by 0.6 and 0.715 respectively, unquote. Using their own argument, the projected size of the upcoming Cascadia megathrust earthquake relies on insufficient data, which results in a strong potential of underestimation. Their projected 9.0 to 9.2 would then result in a 9.6 to a 9.8 magnitude earthquake. The Cascadia megathrust earthquake has the largest known cycle period and involves the longest length of rupture of any plate margin in the world. We can only go back to the Western Pacific to verify that. We look at the Western Pacific as it is down in Indonesia and the Philippine area, and you see subduction going on. And earthquakes happen every day. Whereas, like Terry is talking about the Cascadia megathrust earthquake, it's the longest known cycle period and involves the longest length of rupture of any plate margin in the world. The question that follows is then reasonable to ask, why is it that they project that the Cascadia megathrust earthquake will be under the size of other earthquakes that have occurred which had shorter cycles and shorter lengths involved? The hard science of the Cascadia megathrust earthquake. Section 1, plate tectonics. To understand the CMTE, Cascadia megathrust earthquake, you must first understand the mechanics that cause it. Scientific laws of plate tectonics proves that the movement of the entire continent of North America is the primary cause of the Cascadia megathrust earthquake. Most are aware of the supercontinent of Pangaea. Pangaea was a supercontinent that existed in the far reaches of the past, in the late Paleozoic and early Mesozoic eras. Proof of this is found through geologic matching of original or origin plate edge rock composition in many areas of the world. The entire Atlantic Ocean also proves the ongoing movement of the crustal plates through the volcanic backfilling of the mid-Atlantic ridge. Lava freezes the magnetic pole position at the time of solidifying. These shifts captured by lava leave evidence of both oceanic spread and continental movement. They have left complex ribbons of magnetic stripes across the entire Atlantic Ocean that prove that the continental movement is a progressive, ongoing process. In recent years, the advent of GPS, geodesy, GPS instrument positioning, proves that this understanding of plate movement is correct. This affects all of the major 5 continents. They are all moving into the Pacific Ocean over time. This explains the Pacific Ring of Fire, and why it is almost exclusively subduction zones that encircle the Pacific Ocean. B. The North American movement and the Cascadia megathrust earthquake. As the Atlantic Ocean is growing in size, hard science, there is pressure placed against the eastern edge of the continent of America. This has implications for the eastern side of the continent as a direct result. The greater threat is to the western side of the continent. However, for a while, the eastern side has been pressurized and moved over the last 320 years. The western side has been locked for the most part. This has built up immense intercontinental strain. This strain has produced incredible uplift forces along the western side of the continent. Why uplift, you may ask? Because the friction constraining the continent from moving is on the underside of the continental plate. The location of this friction is along the entire western edge of the continent where the continental plate meets the Pacific plate and the Juan de Fuca plate. The uplift is caused by laws of physics of stress and transfer. You will note that this involves stress transfer to the whole of the western margin of the North American plate. That is an important point to make note of. C. How far will the continent move? First of all, it is primary movement of the western side of the North American continent that will occur. How far the continent will move, no one knows for certain, as geodesy has only been in place for a relatively short period of time. The data is too limited to provide proof of distance moved, and geodesy has only been applied during the period of greatest continental stress. The related stress would potentially reduce the rate of movement to the continent through the entire period. No one can know the rate of continental movement over the last 320 years matches what has only been recently measured during the recent period of highest stress. As a result of this, there's only the means of making an educated best guess. The same with magnetic ribbons in the Atlantic Ocean, which prove generality of process only. 30 to 40 feet of movement is a reasonable guess from my study perspective, and that differs little in real terms from the guesses of credentialed scientists. The whole continent moves, generally speaking, yes. One part may shift at times in adjustment, and then another part another time. But the whole continent is moving. The records of turbidites proves clusters within long period sequences of the Cascadia megathrust earthquakes. In the 4-cluster model, the last earthquake is the largest 2 out of 3 times. The size of these cluster and events promotes a full continental shift occurrence. Turbidite assessment comes from deep seafloor coring and is widely accepted as the best science available to assess the CMTE events through the past 10,000 years. Within the best practices of science, models must be adapted to fit with the total of the science involved from as many related fields as possible. This has not been applied to the current model of the Cascadia megathrust earthquake. A new model for the earthquake is required that fits the best science available. Only by omitting well-established scientific laws of plate tectonics and turbidite data can the current model of the Cascadia megathrust earthquake be accepted. The cluster N model should be incorporated into the current Cascadia megathrust model, because that is what the best available science says. There is a strong potential that all of North America will move in this event, but primarily the West. That is based on solid science rather than science flawed by omissions of tectonic law and turbidite evidence. Section E, news supporting science. Chris Goldfinger and colleagues have already been responsible for overturning previous Cascadia megathrust earthquake beliefs. Until recently, it was believed that only one area of the Juan de Fuca plate moved as a large earthquake. He and many of his colleagues in related fields proved this was not the case through ghost forest dendrochronology, estuary sampling, and ocean sediment sampling. In total, 19 or 20 laterally extensive turbidites on the last 10,000 were found along the North Cascadia margin and are also recorded in cores off of Northern California. Goldfinger et al., 2012, based on these results, he inferred that the margin-wide correlated events were triggered by approximately a magnitude 9 megathrust earthquake, rupturing the entire margin. Chris Goldfinger is a recognized expert regarding the Cascadia megathrust earthquake. He has advanced this field dramatically through the use of sediment sampling with turbidite evidence involved. He recently discovered that there's a link between California, very large earthquakes, and the CMTE. He has not been able to determine that it is an exact timeline match, but rather that they are closely matched in time. There are newly discovered faults offshore of the west coast of California and earthquakes on these faults of late. This promotes California earthquake and tsunami involvement. You now see that science has had to adapt Cascadia megathrust earthquake models twice since 2010. Once as a solid model change, and further as potential added. New scientific evidence that expands the potential area of the Cascadia megathrust earthquake is normal. I have presented solid evidence that should do the same, but it takes 7 to 12 years for mainstream science to accept a new model. There is just not enough time. In this case, the citizens must decide for themselves and to act to lessen their own risks based on the science. Section F, potential. The Philippine plate is wedge shaped. Okay? It's wedge shaped. Wedge. And has been getting absolutely hammered by large earthquakes for the past year or more. It wedges between the Eurasian continental plate system and a section of the Pacific plate system. The Pacific plate sections, it is not one plate, but rather a series of very large interconnected plate sections. It is itself a series of plates separated by immense faults. Evidence of these faults is found in lines of volcanic seamounts that cross the ocean floor. You can see for yourselves on Google Earth. Just like on land, where most volcanoes follow faults, so do volcanic seamounts. This is hard science, easily researched. The wedging effect of the Pacific or the Philippine plate may be forcing the affected Pacific plate section hard against California. I cannot prove this, but Steve Quayle has an insider source that has told me directly that this is what is occurring and that it is having a torsional effect on the plate as well. I cannot prove this, but I can state that it seems logical and it is potential. Section 2. the Greater Cascadia Megathrust earthquake, and the intrinsic relationship of the volcanoes. It is well established that the Cascadia volcanoes, the British Columbia coastal range volcanoes, and the Alaskan near coastal peninsular volcanoes that stretch into the Aleutian Islands are all stratovolcanoes. And all stratovolcanoes are built by the process of subduction. The well-known 1700 Cascadia earthquake was a subduction earthquake. If the process of subduction builds, the volcanoes would not be intrinsically involved in the next Cascadia earthquake. Subduction processes feed the very building process of these volcanoes. This is solidly established law within the field of volcanism. So where should we look for precursor signs first? At the volcanoes. Any plate movement under the volcanoes exposes new, more deeply subducting crust to a melting process, which releases deep crustal trapped water. The water is under immense pressure and so remains liquid, which makes magma lighter and thinner, which causes it to uprise through denser, cooler magma. The uprise causes specific infill signatures or signature types inside the volcanoes. These are infill signatures that are very easily identified on seismograms. We showed you that today, this evening. The initial evidence when magma uprise occurs at one volcano in a chain of volcanoes, as occurred at Mount St. Helens, a separate feed system process could explain the one, and maybe the same for two. If one can be accepted as behaving in a different manner, but the activity expanded, and I picked up on this in the spring of 2019. I did not understand what it meant because only a few volcanoes were involved, mainly Mount St. Helens and Mount Rainier. And it was not a lot of activity initially. I also noted an increase in seamount activity beginning as far back as December 2018. Then by watching magmatic hotspots via satellite, I noted activity increasing to 130 individual hotspots on a specific day at the end of August 2019. I was aware that non-fire hotspots for all of Western North America had a historical daily level of 10 occurrences or less. And I had been watching the entire Western continental US and Canada for hotspots, as I had found that hotspots magma moving just under the surface and visible to satellites, already correlated with infill at volcanoes. I was then able to add activity increases via hotspots at Crater Lake, Newberry, Sutter Butte, Mount Lassen, Mammoth Mountain, Mount Shasta, Mount Adams, near Sisters in Oregon, Mount Hood, Mount Rainier over time, and in subsequent updated Cascadia papers. The total climbed to 317 hotspots by the time I shifted my focus to watching over 500 seismograms per day. On November 20th, 2019, I released my last revision, which included the 317 hotspots. I consistently checked the state and provincial fire agencies involved and was able to subtract the total fires registered from the total hotspots we counted. There was never more than 20% that were known fires. Never more than 20%. By November 20th, 2019, the seismic signatures of the infill increased, as had the number of volcanoes involved. There were now 7 with clearly defined infill signatures on Cascadia seismograms. These were Crater Lake, Newberry Crater, Mount Jefferson area, Mount St. Helens, Mount Rainier, Glacier Peak, and he's got Mount Rainier twice here. With this many volcanoes involved, the entire Pacific Plate must be moving in a process called subduction creep. Since the last Cascadia white paper, this has grown to 12 seismograms, since the last Cascadia white paper, this has grown to 12 large and 14 smaller volcanoes, showing direct evidence of infilling through seismograms. This includes all of California. The rate of infill has increased as well. Only widespread plate movement can cause such a widespread reactivation of all of these volcanoes at much the same time. Section 3, the Greater Cascadia Megathrust Earthquake. Precursor proof of impending release, plus layers of evidence. The proof primarily comes from seismograms that is overwhelmingly supported by further evidence coming from the associated studies of hotspot development, massive areas of tree kill. If you remember the tree kill areas that Terry showed us on the Google Maps, satellite imagery of major venting episodes from now 8 Cascadia volcanoes plus SAACs, mobile air sampling and related findings of elevated SO2 and CO2 levels, oceanic methane releases, an increase in size and frequency of earthquakes in the Cascade Range itself, plus increased activity well outside of the Cascades in California. Seamount activity, lahars, visible lack of snow on Cascade Mountains this winter. Look at Mount Rainier. Reactivation of Cascade volcanoes. Understanding the process. There's an excellent video explanation of this put out by the USGS and available online entitled Volcano Seismicity at Long Dormant Stratovolcanoes. This is a short explanation. Water is released by deep crustal movement in the subduction process. The water remains liquid under extremes of pressure, thinning the near magma and making it lighter. This causes it to rise. The rising magma adds heat, which first heats the cooler sludgy magma. Over time, this heats the whole of the volcano as the process of subduction continues. The increased heating then thins the caprock and the flanks of the volcano. While the heating is advancing, so is pressurization of the volcano. Pressure overcomes the resistance of the rock. Fracturing of the caprock, the summit, follows. Flank fracturing of the volcano, the sides, typically follows caprock fracturing. Bulging of the volcano normally follows flank and caprock fracturing. More pressurization leads to major venting episodes. Uplift around the base of the volcano will also cause smaller earthquakes, which will increase in size and number due to crustal displacement. This ground displacement is due to uprising magma. It is well understood that the magma chambers of stratovolcanoes are much larger than the volcano itself, so the area around the volcano fractures. Over time, earthquakes and at volcanoes will increase in frequency and size. Lahars will often follow the 12 processes above, the process due to heat transfer through fissures caused by flank and caprock fracturing. General mountain exterior rock heating also occurs. Multiple episodes a major venting will occur. As this process develops, sulfur will be noted from some locations via both instrumentation and a visible yellow hue in the venting steam. This is all well understood as pre-eruption activity. Every one of these stages has already occurred in the Cascades. The process is well underway and continues to develop. B. Seismogram evidence. Summary. The evidence of the Cascadia volcano seismograms is strikingly extreme and dramatic. They all have magma infill signatures, and some of them have a great many of them. They are actively infilling most days and have extreme levels of infill periodically. I do not know why every one of the Cascadia volcanoes are not already at level orange, the color code for the active pre-eruption status. 1. The baseline of activity was very low 2 years ago. The seismograms were almost entirely silent, as little as a year and a half ago. That had changed little. Mount St. Helens had minor activity. Mount Baker had some light steam burst activity. I watched all 10 major Cascadia volcanoes as one after the other. They all developed magma infill signatures on seismograms. The magma infill activity accelerated over time. Steam burst signatures. Internal volcanic steam bursts showed on seismograms went way back in mid-2018, but not many. I initially attributed these to outcomes of fracturing for geothermal, which I knew was going on. But they increased in volcanoes affected from geothermal activity, but they increased in volcanoes affected, and over time, they increased in numbers. It was August 30th, 2019, as I recall, when I came to relate this to water bursting from magma as steam. Water bursting from magma as steam due to magma depressurization caused by its uprise inside the volcanoes. All subduction magma contains roughly 4% liquid water, kept liquid by the extreme pressure. I noted cap fracturing occurring September 2019 from Mount Rainier and Mount Adams. This spread to other volcanoes following the same pattern of infill, steam bursts, and then summit fracture signatures. Bulging of Mount Hood, Mount Rainier, and Mount Baker have personally been reported to me by 3 separate eyewitnesses. But I have other sources of information as well. Major venting episodes followed from Mount Shasta, Mount Adams, Mount St. Helens, Sisters Volcano, Mount Hood, Mount Rainier, Mount Baker, and Sayax. I reported on 6 of these in my last Cascadia white paper. These were imaged via satellite. In some cases, SO2 overlays were used for venting. In 1915, Mount Lassen erupted for the first time in 27,000 years. This was preceded by 180 steam bursts in 6+ previous months. Historical records. That is not much different from what I describe as major venting episodes. This venting is well established pre-eruption activity. Via seismograms and reported earthquakes, there has been an increase in the size and number of earthquakes in the Cascade Range. In one case, there was a 4.0 at Mount Rainier and another at Goat Rocks. Just so you are aware, even a 3.0 earthquake in the Cascade Range is quite rare. Venting with a yellow sulfur hue. January 18th, 2020, Mount Baker became exceptionally active with a major infill period proven via seismic signatures. This has been followed every day since the fluctuating levels of steam burst signatures between 25,000 and 35,000 per day on average since January 19th. Now I saw high-level magma influx via seismogram on the 18th, January 18th. So let's work out why that would occur. 1. An eyewitness says the major steam venting has yellow hue when seen on clear days in full midday sun. Sulfur comes from deeper in a volcano most of the time. The magma influx is proven to still be there, or there would not be the major venting episodes or the associated seismic signatures. So what is needed to produce sulfur and also eliminates being able to see the magma influx that we could see before? Here's my logic. The seismograph at Baker is a single component short burst sensor. It has a viewing angle with limitations. Only within an angular scope of field of vibration can it see the vibrations. Now the vibrations can be transmitted through magma and then be seen even if they are originating much deeper. Why did they disappear off the seismograms then? The answer, the magma above the source of the vibrations is not there in its normal state. It has changed form due to the massive fizz effect of steaming off. Think of all the holes in pumice. Hot, soft pumice, fizz effect of steaming off. Think of all the holes. Hot, soft pumice would not transmit vibrations well. There must now be a conduit of pumice-like material above the deeper magma chamber in Mount Baker. What about the sulfur? It is likely that this conduit has led to exposing deeper magma, which contains more sulfur. In other words, the conduit likely now extends down through the cooler and stiffer upper magma in the chamber and into the hotter, more volatile magma, which normally contains more sulfur. Sulfur has a boiling point of 444.6 centigrade. So it comes from the hotter location than water alone to be included in quantity to be vented steam, so the color change happens. This shows the benefits of combining fields of study. That is exactly what I've done. And just for interest's sake, the total number of steam bursts from Mount Baker in the last 30 days is roughly between 750,000 and 1 million. The agencies believe this is normal activity. Mount Shasta, Mount Lassen, Mammoth Mountain also had a dramatic increase in magma infill activity and earthquakes. Mammoth Mountain has even had 2 4.0 earthquakes in the last 2 months via seismogram study. Hotspots and tree kills. Hotspots, I watched for hotspots via satellite imagery to varying degrees from April 2018 onward. In about May of 2019, I made a specific effort to watch all of the western states and all of British Columbia for hotspots. I did this via satellite imaging, noting a normal background level of not more than 10 per day for the whole area. This changed dramatically in August 2019 when I counted 130 hotspots. This escalated to 317 for the area within 2 months. I checked the related fire services data. Never were there more than 20% of the hotspots that were well-known fires. Since my last paper, I only look for hotspots periodically. I note they are now also all around the Gulf of Mexico, the lower Great Lake area. Florida is covered in dense hotspots, and they have spread up the eastern side of the United States. Tree kills. In this case, I use close-up imaging via Google Earth to look for tree kills. What I found was that they began east of Mount Lassen and extended all the way to Mount Rainier. I made a point of checking forest edges, and I found that the area of tree kill was expanding eastward. In many cases, there were only about 5% of the area of tree kill, and it was expanding eastward. In many cases, there was only 5% of the forest that was active in the fringe areas. In many cases, this went quite far into the forest as well. Literally hundreds of thousands of acres of tree kill, by my estimate. It is quite dramatic. The easiest place to find this quickly is due south and east and northeast of Mount Hood. But there are very large areas of tree kills all the way along. And all the tree kills are associated with near volcanic features. This tree kill goes back to as early as 2005, according to Google Earth imagery. Volcanic Features Association. All of the tree kill areas are in close proximity to volcanic features, calderas, lava flow outridges, pothole lake filled calderas, cinder cones, or large cone features. The type of features are many. Bug kills. Let's examine the facts here. Connect the dots and draw a line through all of the main volcanoes, including Mount Lassen, Mount Shasta, and go all the way to Mount Rainier to the north. But we must exclude the offset ones such as Mammoth Creek, Crater Lake, Newberry, Mount St. Helens. You now have a line following the plate edge, but a distance away from the coastline. These bugs all apparently know this invisible line, and it creates a barrier they cannot cross. For almost without exception, there are no major tree kill areas west of this line. Those bugs really know their place, apparently. Compare the data sets. The hotspots I presented previously and the surge to 130 occurred on August 30th, 2019, or very close to that date. That is now over 6 months ago. If not fires, then what causes crustal hotspots? The only source of heat in the ground or under it is magma. So magma has risen to a near surface temperature level to create the hotspot. How can this be? The tree kill provides the answer to this. One, there's been an increase in near surface magma occurrence going on since 2005, according to tree kill evidence. Gases upwelling ahead of hotspot development is predictable and logical. 3, that the magma gases rise through the crust, and that's known. 4, the magma gases are poisonous to tree roots, and that is scientifically established. Sisters Volcano, a 50-mile diameter area nearby had crustal uprise rate averaging 2.5 centimeters per year, beginning in 1997. USGS reported in a bulletin from Global Volcano Discovery 2005. This was due to magma infusion. It also noted that magma gases had altered water chemistry in that area. The tree kills in the Sisters volcano area began in 2005. Hotspots in the area did not follow until 2019. Approximate chronology leading to hotspots. 1997, magma influx infusion under the crust. 2005, early stages of tree kill due to magma gases rising through the crust. In 2019, widespread hotspot development. E. Snowpack and lahars. Many have taken a good look at Mount Rainier this winter, January 2020. As they live there, they know what is normal. It is primarily the top 3,000 feet that is prominent with snow, and that is between 10,000 and 13,000 feet. It's cold up there that high, and there was no shortage of precipitation this year. While Stevens Pass was closed due to heavy snowfall totals, Mount Rainier had about 25% bare rock showing above the 10,000 foot level. Later, the park was closed, what park officials reported as landslides. Mount Rainier has had magma infill activity on seismograms for over 6 months, which has greatly escalated. Many periods of internal steam burst activity on seismograms. Multiple major venting episodes as seen on satellite imagery, plus eyewitness accounts. Summit and flank fracture signatures on seismograms, and a 4.0 earthquake, according to my seismogram interpretation. Officials claim landslides in the middle of the winter. Landslides rarely happen midwinter. They happen with the spring thaw, and spring comes late at higher elevations. Maybe park officials don't know what a lahar is. It was about 1 week later that the Pineapple Express arrived. Sea level temperatures were about 40 degrees Fahrenheit, while the landslides were happening. It was still well below freezing up high and inland away from ocean moderated temperatures. Seamount activity. It was seamount activity I first noticed as an anomaly. The activity at the British Columbia seamounts began to increase January 2019. 5 along the northern 2/3 of Vancouver Island and 1 at North Haida Gwaii. Since then, there was a hot spot south of Victoria, BC in the ocean. I looked closely and there it was, another seamount. I also monitored axial seamount. Axial has a known fill and empty cycle, which is normally about 7 years. I tracked its infill rate, and on March 2019, I forecast that it would be empty during the summer, 4 years ahead of time. It did, according to the oceanic hotspot that occurred over it. Oceanic hotspots have been seen offshore of Washington and Oregon states at least 5 times in the last 6 months that I can recall. Methane releases. Oceanic methane is similar to a garbage dump methane in production. Every 243 years, an average, along comes the Cascadia megaquake and scrapes all those loose seafloor material into a pile along the oceanic crustal crust edge, the continental crust edge. And the mixed sand and dead sea life exists there, and the sea life rots within it. It is a weak structure holding the methane. Picture fresh cut green grass left in a pile. Go back and kick the pile in 5 days, and it stinks like manure. Well, that long continental pile got kicked by the continent, creating a methane release all the way from mid-Washington to Mexico. And as a result, that was just December 19, 2019, as I recall. There were lots of articles around it. North America had to shift for that to occur. You should now understand that there's a very high level of activity all the way through the Cascadia volcanoes. More than it includes British Columbia, California, and Alaska. Alaska has its own tree kills as well. It also has a dramatic increase in ongoing volcanic activity. Section 4, magma influx. As the underside of the crust is extremely hot, added heat and magma movement would result in crustal conversion to magma. This thins the crust over time. Channels. I've located 4 main magma influx channels. Magma has been drawn inland from offshore into Washington, Oregon, and California. The continents float on magma. The underside of the crust is therefore almost molten. It takes very little thermal exchange to convert the underside of the crust into magma as a result. This is crustal conversion to magma, CCTM. Due to complex series of factors, magma has been inundating most of the U.S. west of the Cascade Range, the Sierra Nevada, and the San Gabriel Mountains. B. Inundation east of the Cascades. To the east of these same mountain ranges, magma influx has inundated the near whole eastern side, eastern Washington, eastern Oregon, and eastern California. There are areas less affected and others that are continuously active. It is much worse in most of California. California was full of hotspots. And it was full of hotspots sooner than Oregon and Washington, but only by a couple of months. But the level of hotspots for area size was much greater. Again, the concern is crustal conversion to magma. The concern is crustal conversion to magma. Why is CCTM a concern? It has to do with duration of the process. Tree kill evidence and sisters evidence combined, the process goes on for as long as 22 years before the crustal thinning advances to the development of significant hotspot levels. Not all that is affected was affected early. This has been a process of spread. There is a large part of Northern California that seems to have not been affected by it at all, as one in South Oregon. What are the sources of evidence of crustal conversion to magma? Evidence from seismograms. Seismograms show abundant flow through all of Los Angeles, the San Joaquin Valley, the Sacramento Valley into Riverside area, and all the way up along the Imperial Fault from Salton Sea to just below Las Vegas. San Francisco, both north and south areas also have abundant flow. No area looks good west of the San Joaquin Valley either. All of these areas are suffering from magma movement under the crust as seen on seismograms. I also checked every PNSN seismogram west of the Cascades. We checked every PNSN seismogram west of the Cascades and found the same for almost all sites. The same for far east of the Cascades in Washington and Oregon. Hot spot development. The number of hot spots has increased, and they have spread to areas I would not have expected. Western United States, British Columbia, Canada, I was aware of. I had not expected this to spread to areas to include all the perimeter of the Gulf of Mexico, areas around the South Great Lakes, the East Coast states of the United States, much of Central America, the Caribbean, North Central America, and much of Mexico. The development of intense level of hotspots for all of Florida was also quite a surprise to me. Worldwide hotspot development is outside the scope of this paper. Okay, I'm going to stop there on page 12. I'm going to note page 12. We can start that tomorrow. We can start on page 12 tomorrow. There's 21 pages of this particular paper. And then there's one involving the volcanoes. And that in and of itself is utterly unreal. Terry Rumpel's brilliant. He covers it and explains it in such thoroughness so as not to leave even a rock unturned. Why? I believe that Terry's right about everything that he said. And he brings the evidence to the forefront. He doesn't leave any rock unturned. He doesn't leave any rock unturned. So tomorrow we're going to start on mobile air sampling, ground fog, and the Salton Sea area. Okay? It might be good to note right here that the Salton Sea area today, had a lot of activity, folks. The Salton Sea had a lot of activity. And you don't see that on the USGS map. Real quick, before the end of this program, we got 5 minutes left here. I will show you that activity. Okay. See the activity in Southern California there? We have activity going down from the Salton Sea, down the coast of Baja California, and down into the Gulf of California. Along what? The San Andreas Fault. Down into the Gulf. Okay. Let's go up here just a little ways. We have 20 plus earthquakes. I tapped on the 20, and now we have 2 10 plus and a large swarm of quakes. Okay. The swarm goes from up at Home Gardens, up near Glen Avon, Riverside County. Remember that? Where all that quake activity started before the huge quake that we got at Ridgecrest? Yeah. Yucca Valley, California, 1.51. 1.51 today. Beaumont, California, 0.72. See, we still have 10 plus earthquakes there. A small swarm of quakes there. Not a cluster, a small swarm. Okay. Beaumont, California, Banning, California, that whole area. These are ones here. Okay. Let's continue further south. Let's go down to Idlewild, the Anza Gap area, Riverside County, San Bernardino County. Idlewild, California is up in the mountains of San Bernardino. Beautiful area, wonderful ski place, nice resort town. But we have the Anza Gap. and that goes down into San Diego County, the Anza area. We go down to Lake Henshaw, east of Escondido, my fishing spot, where we had earthquakes today, is 0.39 and 0.54. We go down to Borrego Springs. Borrego Springs, up on the top of the Chocolate Mountains. Chocolate Mountains. Borrego Springs, 1.71, 0.88, 0.98. Okay, Borrego Springs. Continuing going down the Chocolate Mountains to just the east side of the Chocolate Mountains as it goes down into the Imperial Valley. Ocotillo Wells is 0.89, just west of the Salton Sea there. Okay, Ocotillo Wells is 0.90. Up on the northeast corner of the Salton Sea, we have the North Shore is 0.99. Okay, is 0.99. Then we have offshore earthquakes off the Baja. Primo Tapira, Baja California, a 1.56. Further south and offshore, 32 miles, Sureste de Rodolfo Sanchez. We have a 3.5 offshore. Now, what do we have there, folks? Let me show you something. We have the crustal plate just west of Baja California. And we have an earthquake. We have an earthquake. And again, I showed you the San Andreas Fault going down by the Salton Sea, Imperial County going into Mexico, and bingo, bango, boingo, right into the middle of the Gulf of California, where we have a swarm of earthquakes. Okay, a swarm of earthquakes. 3.70, 3.70, 3.80, 4.30, and on. I didn't hit all of them. I just hit 4 of them. 3s and 4s in the middle of the Gulf of California. The area is heated up, folks. The San Andreas Fault is moving. Okay, it's moving. We mentioned the Salton Sea. We've mentioned that measurements, and you're going to find this out in the next coming days, the measurements taken from the Salton Sea. Around where? I'll show you where. I'll show you where. The Salton Sea, Bombay Beach. And Terry will mention in his paper, and we'll get to it tomorrow, the Salton Sea, Bombay Beach. Okay, for now, this ends the broadcasting day of Emergency Management Associates. We appreciate you being here with us. Ask the Lord to bless you. God bless you. Do know that we love you. And as Walter Cronkite would say, that's the way it is. Thursday, March 5th, 2019. Or 2020, I'm sorry, March 5th, 2020. For Emergency Management Associates, this is Ron Tyler. Have a great day, folks. Have a great day.